Hi everyone. As I just said in the chat, I would invite you all just to relax, to come into this space, perhaps closing your eyes, and just connect up with whatever feels like something that's deep in you, that sense of spirit that you already have. And we'll get going after this track finishes. This is Nigel Shaw, by the way. Amazing flautist. Hello, friends. Wow, that track really got to me this time. I'm like, I don't know if you guys felt that. Maybe it's something to do with us all feeling it at the same time or something. It just, when that first part of the vocals comes in, it's like, just broke something. So, welcome. There's a lot of people that I know, and there's also some people that I don't know. And I just want to say how happy that I am to be here talking to you about something which has just got such a huge part in my life, in my heart. And I don't want to underestimate this link in a way to how I know most people here, which is through my music. And there are people in the past that have said that certain lyrics or certain sounds that I've worked with have touched them or made them feel something. And this is going to be important, and I'm going to come back to this a little bit later. But there is something about the awe, the sense of beauty, the heart-opening aspect of music and how it relates to spirituality and how it relates to this path of freedom and of deepening in love and deepening in awareness. It has a lot to do with that, in fact. And this is a bit of a new thing for me. Obviously, I'm taking some risks here with myself. I'm just putting myself out there and trusting in the spontaneity, trusting in the emergence. Because I feel like there's something quite soulful about that. That when you do that, it's almost like because of your love, because of your passion, because of what some people call eros, it propels you into something that maybe you just couldn't have planned. And there's something quite wonderful about it. So I'm going to lay out a little bit of a structure. I've had a thought of a number of different ways to do this. And I've got kind of your comments up here, and I've got some like bullet points about things that I want to get onto. And we are going to start with a bit of a meditation because this path really is all about experience. Like a really awesome Dzogchen master once said, trust experience, but always refine your view. And this is going to be quite central to this path. What I want to say that this isn't, I want to say a few things about what this is not, because of course a lot of people have come here and maybe thought, well, maybe it's going to be like this and maybe it's going to be like that. And what does this sense of soulfulness, the things that I've posted about, what effect has that had on you? I guess I want to almost inquire like together right now. And maybe if you just have a think of what has brought you here today. You know, there's so many ways that you could spend your time and so many things that reach out to you. But what was it about this offer, this invitation that called out to you? And I guess I can't really read all of the comments now, and you don't have to share it as well. It could just be something that you just feel and just sort of, just allow that to sort of percolate on your own. Or you can write a comment and tell everyone else what your intention is here. But yeah, I do want to say that there's a few things that this is not, and I kind of want to draw a line around what we are not doing here. Not because I don't like whatever it is that I'm about to say we're not doing, or that I don't think it's important, or I don't think that at other times in your life or in other moments it can be great. But my first thing is, it's not going to be metaphysics or cosmology. So those words really mean that much to everybody, so I'll just explain. Basically, metaphysics or cosmology is the view, belief, study of the way that reality is. So the way that the universe is the very tiniest thing that you could imagine or measure. There's a lot of religious metaphysics, so the fact that all planets in the universe are held and contained by a serpent known as Sheshanaga, that heaven and hell exist, reincarnation, you could also say that's a metaphysics, that we're in an age of Aquarius, and that means that civilization will begin waking up somehow now. And if we want to sort of take more into physics and things like that, they also have a load of different metaphysics, like the world is really just sort of particles and dust and billiard balls bouncing off one another. Or maybe we are a universal membrane floating in higher dimensional space, repeatedly smashing into neighboring universes. That's known as the brain world theory. And then one of my favorites is the theory that space-time is actually a superfluid substance flowing with zero friction, and with the universe rotating, superfluid space-time would be scattered with vortices. So that's pretty interesting, isn't it? So don't think that spiritual systems and religious systems have the final say on crazy metaphysical beliefs. And of course, the tradition that I guess I am inspired most by has a lot of metaphysics in it as well. So I'm not saying that metaphysics isn't important. It's actually something which is really important. I mean, we do want to know how reality is at some point. What I'm saying is that right now we're just going to draw a line around it, and we're just going to say we're not doing that right now. This is sort of important because we are living in a time where information and the flow of what we believe the world to be and what we believe, say, politics to be, or what we believe God to be, it's, as I'm sure you've noticed, incredibly divisive often. And there is something that is really important about letting your view of the world change and develop and be refined. So going back to this quote, trust in experience, but always refine your view, always be refining your view. So what I'm going to say is going to be related to meditation, and just in that same vein of, I don't want it to seem like, okay, this is just a lot of thoughts and this is a lot of intellectualizing and a lot of way to look at life and experience and meditation. What I want to start to do is just come to this experience of our body, and we're going to meditate in a way that I haven't even decided yet. I'm just going to make it up as I go, but it is related to this path, and I want to know in a way how you guys get on with this. So I've seen some lovely comments up there about some of your intentions. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I will get, and of course we're going to have a Zoom session after this. So we're going to have all the time we like to chat and talk about maybe some of your experiences, to ask questions. I really want to see this as the start of something. I don't want this to just be, hey, I'm going to talk about a load of stuff that I don't normally talk about and it's over. This is a practice that one can take throughout all of your life. And I want to open that up today. Okay. So it would be preferable to be in an upright but relaxed position. So you can do this sat down, cross-legged if you like, or on your knees like Japanese style meditations involve. I'm going to do it on a chair because I'm sitting at this computer. A lot of people kind of don't see chairs as almost proper meditation sometimes. With what we're going to go into today, the type of practice it is, it often really starts going when you can actually sit for a bit longer than perhaps your knees will allow you to. So if you want to meditate now, the invitation is to do this, and we are going to then contextualize what we do now, and everything is hopefully going to lead on from another. So we just sit in whatever position we feel is a great balance between brightness and relaxation. And almost in the posture itself, there is an expression of that sense of energy and alertness. Just having your back relatively straight, but not too straight, and an uprightness. I think I've got WhatsApp notifications coming through, so I should probably turn that off. Okay. First day of this. Okay, so we're going to start by just opening the awareness like air in a balloon to include the entire body. So it doesn't have to be one part or another part, or somewhere to the left or somewhere to the right or somewhere up or somewhere down. If you can, just try and get an awareness of the entire body. And when I say body, what I mean is actually what can be called the energy body. So this is basically the body, but it's sort of like not just the bones and the nails and the spleen or whatever. It's the actual effervescence, the sort of flowing sense of sort of subtlety that's in there. And if you can't get an idea of that, or if that seems completely alien to you, we're all going to be having come from different practices and different things. But if you can't get an idea of that or a sensation of that, then just open up the awareness to the whole body and just see what's there. Like, what is actually there? And what you'll find is that the mind continually tries to go off on another direction. And don't make a fuss, just bring it back slowly, gently, persistently. Just bring that mind back and just open the awareness again. It will shrink a gazillion times. It doesn't matter, because your job is just to continually bring it back to that full body awareness. And as we do this, we're going to add a few things to this meditation to make it easier for the mind to relax and to let go. The first thing we're going to do is just explore the longest comfortable breath that you can do. And we're also going to count. So on the in-breath, we're going to count from 1 to 6. And on the out-breath, we're going to count down from 6 to 1. And so it's a way that it kind of keeps the mind busy while you're being aware of that whole body. Again, that balloon-like awareness that is like air coming into a big balloon. On the in-breath, you count up to 6. Then on the out-breath, you count from 6 to 1. So you do that at your own time, in your own pace, in your own length. For some of you, it'll be a very long breath. For some of you, it'll be slightly shorter. But just feel what's the breath that you can do. And we're not moving much air here. It's just light, subtle breath, but it's just long. So, for instance, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then immediately back 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like that. I didn't do the same timing there, by the way. You do your own timing. Just the longest comfortable, but counting up from 1 to 6 and from 6 to 1. Feeling that awareness in the whole body. And noticing what the breath feels like as it comes in the body. As you breathe in, this awareness just fills the body. As you breathe out, the awareness is still there, just seeing what difference that does. Is there any difference between the in and the out breath? In breath might feel quite enlivening, quite rejuvenating. And the out breath might feel quite relaxing, like letting go. The more you can let go in this, the deeper it can become. And you're still counting this 1 to 6, 6 to 1. If you're a visual person, it can be that you can even imagine the numbers in your head. Bright, white numbers, like neon lit numbers. Make them really noticeable, visual. If you're more a sound person, you can hear sort of internal monologues and things. And maybe you hear yourself saying them. Hear yourself loudly calling out these numbers. All the while having the awareness of the whole body. Just these two things. Counting with the breath and this awareness of the whole body. If you feel like your attention is flitting back between the two, that's okay. Just try and be aware of the whole thing. And as you go with that, just notice, is there any difference in the body? Are your legs included in this? Is your back included in this? Feeling the breath in the whole body. What about in the hands? Can you feel what it's like for the breath to come in, and then what the hands feel like? And as you go with this, maybe it's helpful for you to imagine this breath coming in as this white, bright, cloud-like light. It just flows in like it's some sort of holy light. And on the out-breath, it also is light. It's just a little visualization. It's not like a whole, I need to see it really carefully and strongly. It's like, can I add this little tincture, this little suggestion? Does that help? And the object is here to allow yourself to relax and feel as you can. That's the goal here. We're playing with this breath to allow you to feel as good as you can. What feels best here? The breath needs to be slightly shorter. Does that feel better? Maybe the breath needs to be slightly longer. Maybe the counting if you really want. What gets you closer to well-being, peace, joy? This light coming in, that's the breath. What would it be almost to imagine it as the breath of the All-Merciful? You're breathing in the divine. What would that feel like? Are there areas of the body that feel slightly nicer now? What about in the base of your spine? What does that feel like now? Again, the awareness of the whole body, but you can feel the breath in different parts. What does the base of the spine feel like now? Maybe there's some sense of relaxation, of comfort there. And what about in the chest? Can you breathe into the chest with that longest comfortable breath? The breath that takes you the deepest and the breath that feels the best. What does it feel like in the chest? And what about in the face? And the head? The whole face and head? What does it feel like? The breath to almost come in through that. And what would it be like to take the breath and imagine it coming in 360 degrees around you, drawing into the skin all the way around the body, like osmosizing, I guess that's the word, osmosizing into the body, drawing into the body all around this bright awareness. Including the legs in that, including the chest, the head. What would it be like for this whole body to be soaking into this breath from all around? If there are thoughts or if there are anything taking you off, it's okay. Just bring it back to the breath. Bring it back to that awareness of the whole body. You'll do that a million times. Doesn't matter. That's all part of it. We're learning a muscle. We're building up our attention muscle. Bring it back to that big body awareness. And notice, is there any part of the body that maybe feels just slightly nicer than perhaps when you started? Is there any part of the body in which there's even pleasure, perhaps? Bright awareness pervading all throughout the body. Just continue to do that for a little bit longer. Whichever of the things that I've introduced there, which of them feel the best right now? Can you feel like that pleasure is like a little ember? And by breathing in a certain way, you can almost make it more, almost spread it. Just by playing with the breath, you can make the body feel a very different way. And we're about to draw to a close of this meditation. And if you didn't feel bright or if you didn't feel pleasure, that's okay. Just be with what is your experience. Be with what is your experience right now, this mind-matter phenomenon. But if you are feeling some kind of pleasure or comfort, even however humble it is, however small it is, and just really put your awareness on that. If there's a certain part of the body right now that feels slightly nicer than other parts, then put your attention on that now. Breathe in that awareness into that part. Is there a way that it can almost expand? And it's like a little ember and you're tending to it. Breathing in such a way to grow this ember into a fire. And now recognizing what your body feels like. We're going to start becoming more aware of the room around us. Maybe the sounds of ambient noises. And become aware of the contact that we have on the chair or cushion. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, I wonder how that was for you. I'm gonna explain a lot of this really, and then we're going to talk about it in the Zoom. There is something about meditating together that is really powerful. I feel it even now, just having, even though we're not in the same physical space, there is a way to relate to each other here, and I feel sort of supported by the fact that we are all doing this together. And yeah, and please don't worry if any of that seemed like it didn't really if it didn't really land, that's okay. That's really okay. What I've done here is basically created a bit of a tour of possible ways of working. And if any of you had anything resembling comfort or a little bit of a nice feeling, a little bit of peace, a little bit of joy, whatever it was, however you experienced it, we are going to go from there. And this path, I'm going to say this right now, this path leads you all the way. And we're going to talk about what the way is. You may not connect what you've just done with what I'm about to talk about. But I'm going to go into it now, okay? And then we're going to talk about it. All right. So, what I want to say as well, just to get this out there, is that this is not what I'm talking about today. It's not what I call kind of, I probably shouldn't call it, but spiritual light, okay? There is a lot of teachers, a lot of practices that have kind of come into the world, come into this meeting point with the West, and it's really maybe more of a kind of a lifestyle thing. You know, we do a little bit of this and do a little bit of that, and I don't want to disregard that or say that that's all bad, because sometimes that's what people want and that's fine, okay? But the opportunity here is something far greater. I want to give you a little quote here. This is from Hal Blacker, who's actually a Dzogchen teacher, but he said, we intend to explore, he's writing in this magazine about spiritual practice, we intend to explore the superficiality that pervades so much of the current spiritual exploration and discourse in the West, particularly in the United States, all too often in the translation of the mystical traditions from the East into the American idiom. Their profound depth is flattened out, their radical demand is diluted, and their potential for revolutionary transformation is squelched. How this occurs often seems to be subtle, since the words of the teachings are often the same. Yet through an apparent sleight of hand involving perhaps their context and therefore ultimately their meaning, the message of the greatest teachings often seems to become transmuted from the roar of the fire of liberation into something more closely resembling the soothing burble of a California hot tub. Whilst there are exceptions, the radical implications of the greatest teachings are thereby often lost. So that sounds quite harsh, right? And, you know, I really don't mean to cause offense at all, but I want to put it as there's an opportunity here for a path that leads to radical freedom and to states of joy and peace and bliss that are just not in the range of what most people experience. And it's a bit of a lost art in some ways, because people think that, you know, meditation is about this, or meditation is about that, or, you know, we live such busy lives, and when we gravitate to a certain teaching that just tells us that it's all about just be in the now, and there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and there's a part of us that perhaps really likes that idea, and it is a beautiful way to work sometimes, but I'm here to say, I guess, that there is something of a missed opportunity in that, because it's not the full end of the matter. So I want to also say, just at the beginning, hot tubs aren't so bad, but yeah, I'm up for radical freedom. Yeah. Yeah, no, I like hot tubs as well, of course. So I want to say that, what is your relationship to hearing? Just want to put this question out there, and just in the back of your mind, just maybe be thinking of this. What is your relationship to hearing about states of consciousness or parts of the path that maybe are not where you are at now? You know, maybe there's something that really, a lot of people, when I say some of this, will go, wow, you know, it really resonates with me. A lot of people will be like almost turned off by it. And my question is, why? Why is it that thinking of something that you haven't experienced yet, perhaps, often our self-critical mind kind of comes into it and starts using it as a way to beat up the self, to think, oh, I'm not there yet, and you've got this whole story going on about how you didn't do that properly, and so common in this age, in this modern society. Or there's just something about it that's just like, oh, I just don't want that. So I just want that to be a little question for you. You know, what is your relationship to hearing about, say, a map, a path that the Buddha described? So the Buddha, he really liked to teach in this way. He would actually describe a map, partly because he wanted people to be aware of maybe what they're encountering as they go along, partly because he sort of wanted to whet people's appetite. And you can't help but thinking that there is a part of that in the way that he taught this stuff. He talked about goals, you know, he talked about striving so many times, you know. There is this kind of view in the West now that, you know, spirituality is just nowhere to go, nothing to do, just, you know, and really how connected is that to anything else that goes on in our life? You know, does anyone ever learn an instrument just by sort of standing next to the piano and be like, right, I've done it now? It is a practice, and it is something, it's an art, you know. I really want to underline that in a way. It's an art, and it's not going to be that you just sort of learn a certain technique and suddenly it goes all the way. It's a method of your own personal attunement and your sensitivity and how you work with things. And some of these questions relate to meditation. They relate to everything in your life. So this is just going to be a bit of an exploration of the question of, is it possible for us to meet life differently? And what are the possibilities of being human? What are our possibilities? Are we okay with just maybe realizing that there were other things available to us, and we go through our lives just maybe involving ourselves in things that maybe aren't so important? You know, I'm not absolutely going to say what I think is important or what I think in your life should be important. But this question of what is soulful to you. So many people live in lives and work jobs and so forth that, they're given these goals and these things to strive for that have nothing to do with their deepest, widest, truest idea of themselves. And so it's understandable that a lot of people will just be like, oh, goals, places to be, things to practice. I don't want any part of that. But these are the strivings of the soul. These are the strivings that actually make life this beautiful, breathtaking voyage of discovery. So I would say that these goals are important, and at least they have been for me. So I want to start with a quote. I say start, I'm already 50 minutes into this. Wow. I want to start with a quote from the Buddha. So he says, "Just as the river Ganges slants, slopes, and inclines towards the east, so too one who develops and cultivates the 4 jhanas slants, slopes, and inclines towards nirvana." So the question is, what are these 4 jhanas and why are they important? So when the Buddha was at a plowing festival, this is not made up, by the way. This is really what happened. He was looking at his father who was plowing something, and he said, "I recall once when my father the Sakyan was working, and I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree. Then, quite secluded from sensuality, secluded from unskillful mental qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana, with rapture and joy born from seclusion, accompanied by initial thought and sustained thought. Could that be the way to awakening? Then following on that memory came the realization, this is the way to awakening." Okay, so the Buddha had this memory when he was doing his self-mortification practices, when he was starving himself and he thought the way of enlightenment was to kind of annihilate the self, and he was living on 1 grain of rice a day and things like that, and just in a terrible state of despondency and depression. And he had this memory of sitting under that rose apple tree and remember going into what's called the first jhana, which is the state of deep absorption, and he just had this sense of that's blameless. And not only is that blameless, that is the way that you can start to go on this path of truly letting it all go. So samadhi, I don't know if anyone has heard about samadhi. It's often talked about as concentration, but that kind of gives this sort of furrowed brow sort of quality to it. Samadhi is actually the full range of meditative well-being that's possible in meditation. And it is the 8 jhanas. I'm just only going to go into the 4 jhanas tonight. But essentially, each of these states, you get into what we did today. If anyone felt that kind of a little bit of pleasure, and it's okay if you didn't, because there are some other things you can do that will kind of unlock that for you, which we can talk about either in the Zoom discussion or another time. But if you felt that sense of pleasure happening, sometimes people feel it through doing metta or doing vipassana or doing another practice. But what happens is that we slowly develop that comfortable feeling, that pleasure feeling. And then what happens is the mind enjoys it. It settles in it. And what you know, the mind feels like it can just really be steady with that feeling. And it's not really that hard anymore to concentrate on it, because it's just so lovely. It's just so beautiful that you just start to really, the mind just stays there. And it go off, but it stays there, and you feel something building. And the more the mind stays there, the more the intensity of that pleasure grows. And it becomes what one of my teachers calls a positive feedback loop, wherein the intensity of positivity grows, the steadiness grows, that grows more, that grows more. And until the whole mind and heart, what they call the chitta in Buddhism, just sort of absorbs itself and just rests in that state of pleasure. And it's known as piti, this pleasure stuff. I mean, PT can come in all kinds of, I saw some in the comments, sometimes people talk about tingling, warmth, opening, lightness, vibration. Some on the higher sort of intensities of PT, you have an experience which is much like being hit by lightning or something, or a very strong kind of orgasmic kind of feeling. It's not like that for everybody, and it's not like that, definitely not like that for everyone all the time. But it is a whole range, and this PT, I'll just call it PT from now. It just grows into the whole body, and when it saturates and suffuses the entire body, that's known as the first jhana. So that's the first meditative absorption that the Buddha talked about as being the way to awakening. So he's got this beautiful poetic image of what he calls the first jhana. He enters and abides in the first jhana and makes the rapture and pleasure drench, steep, fill, and pervade this body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the rapture and pleasure. And he's got this simile. Just as a skilled bathman or bathman's apprentice heaps bath powder in a metal basin and, sprinkling it gradually with water, kneads it until the moisture wets his ball of bath powder, soaks it and pervades it inside and out, yet the ball itself does not ooze, so too he makes the rapture and pleasure drench, steep, fill, and pervade this body, so that there is no part of this whole body unpervaded by the rapture and pleasure. So it kind of gives us a story of what life was like a bit in the time of the Buddha, where they had, a bathman to go and create this soap ball, basically. And it's interesting because it's quite an active image. You actually bring your awareness into your body, and you sort of breathe in certain ways that can really kind of stoke this little ember. So it's it's I feel like these images, these poetic images, are quite on the money with what it actually feels like. And of course with PT, and I don't know if anyone's, I'm pretty sure some of you have experienced this, but sometimes when you go just in nature, and you feel like goosebumps or something, or you listen to a beautiful piece of music and something comes in, that is PT as well. Not from a meditation, but it's still PT. And so basically the first jhana is just absorbing yourself in that entire feeling. As I go through this, you can also just have this experience now, just open up that feeling in your body, that, sometimes actually just talking about it starts to bring it on. And I will say this right now, if any of you felt this, and I really believe that everyone can feel this, my teacher is pretty adamant that if you felt this PT, you can actually go all the way through all these jhanas. And if you go through all the jhanas, I'm not going to say that is awakening, but because it's quite a complicated relationship between the jhanas and the insight, but it allows you to let go in a way that it just seems totally the same process. Anyway, we'll get back to that. So, so second jhana, basically when this PT just kind of, it's quite buzzy and it's quite, they call it rapture sometimes actually. And it can be blissful. It can be very blissful actually. Okay, yeah, some of you are saying about how you felt it in different sort of natural settings and things. Yeah, that's really what we're going to often for listening to amazing music, is this kind of, or kind of appreciating art or nature, or, it's something that we really have a internal clock or direction to kind of go towards the PT. It gets even more interesting. So when this PT actually gets full, when you're marinating it in it, which is part of the practice, is really just to marinate yourself in it. Eventually it kind of mellows a little bit and it turns into this sort of lovely feeling of happiness that is not just this kind of physical, like buzzy thing, but actually it's just this very deep happiness, like this, a wellspring. And Buddha actually uses this simile. He says, just as though there were a mountain lake whose waters welled up from below, Oh, and it had no inflow from east, west, north, or south, and would not be replenished from time to time by showers of rain. Then the cool fount of water welling up in the lake would make the cool water drench, steep, fill, and pervade the lake, so that there were no part of the whole lake unpervaded by cool water. So too, he or she makes the rapture and pleasure drench, steep, fill, and pervade this body, so that there is no part of this whole body unpervaded by the happiness and rapture. So I've got a question, and I always feel this way. Okay, we'll get to this in the Zoom chat. I just want to run through these, and then we can talk about how this feeling can be a lovely abiding, as the Buddha called it. But so the second jhana, I just really want to say that, it's, everyone wants happiness. Everyone wants to be happy. It's something that almost all of us agree on. And here is this wellspring, this waterfall of happiness. And the heart just gets to a point where it's just totally fulfilled. It just feels like, I just have enough happiness right now. And it's an incredibly beautiful experience. And yet it's not the end of the story either. In fact, it's only just the start of the story. I just want to keep on whetting your appetite for two more jhanas, okay? And then we'll get into how this all works and why we're doing this. Okay, third jhana, basically when the heart and the chitta just feels completely suffused with all this happiness, then it mellows even more. It becomes more refined, and the third jhana is basically just peacefulness. The PT, the kind of buzzy stuff, is actually gone, and it is full of this radiant peacefulness. And the image here is, just as in a pond of blue or red or white lotuses, some lotuses that are born and grow in the water thrive immersed in the water without rising out of it, and cool water drenches, steeps, fills, and pervades them to their tips and their roots, so that there is no part of all those lotuses unpervaded by cool water. So too he makes the pleasure divested of rapture, so it means the rapture's gone, drench, steep, fill, and pervade this body, so that there is no part of this whole body unpervaded by the pleasure divested of rapture. So some people, when they hear that, oh, it's just peaceful, they're like, well, isn't the rapture just much better? And it's actually not. There is something that is more sublime, that is just more fulfilling through each jhana, and you can't really expect that, but inevitably it is. And so, and with all of these things, it's like the jhana itself is something that, okay, happens in the bounds of your body, but at some point it almost feels like these jhanas are like realms, these like beautiful, enchanted treasure realms of experience that are just, the world is somehow made of the quality of each jhana. So sometimes you walk around after a meditation or something, and it's just like the birds are just, they're singing of peace, and even sort of not so nice sounds like, impact drivers or whatever. They just have this air of peace and colored by the facts of the jhana. And this gets really quite important as it goes on. And just to finish this little tour of the jhanas, with the fourth jhana, the peacefulness, even if you can imagine, even that mellows, and eventually it just becomes this bright white awareness. I mean, I say white, but they can all be quite bright in some ways, but it's this sort of just awareness that doesn't have much going on, really. It is just a stillness, you could say, just a bright stillness. And this is the image that he gives it. He sits pervading this body with a pure, bright mind, so that there is no part of this whole body unpervaded by the pure, bright awareness. Just as though a man was sitting covered from the head down with a white cloth, so that there would be no part of his whole body unpervaded by the white cloth. So too he sits, this body, with a pure, bright awareness, so that there is no part of this whole body unpervaded by that. Okay, so I had to think a little bit about whether it's going to be something that is helpful to share. And really, I came to the conclusion that the types of people that I know through my music, through this community, through people that have perhaps been interested in, let's say, expanding our consciousness through other means, seeking after pleasures and being able to really give our hearts to these things, to be touched by music. I thought that actually, if someone had told me about these things a long time ago, I would have been just chomping at the bit to get into this, basically. I actually was in a tradition that had no sense of the jhanas, actually, and I think I spent a lot of time just sort of treading water, in fact, and actually being told to come out of jhanas because they didn't fit the tradition's view of what we were supposed to be doing. And it's really changing a lot in the last 10, 15 years. There's been a lot of realization that this part of the Buddha's teaching is not, I mean, I don't know, how many of you have even heard about jhanas before? I mean, I guess if the Buddhists in the place may have, but there, so many people have heard about mindfulness and things like that. The Buddha really only mentioned mindfulness a few times, whereas throughout the suttas, he's saying, monks, go and practice jhana, go and bathe in the bliss of this jhana, go and suffuse yourself in the pleasure of this jhana. So how does that land? I'm wondering. We can do this in the discussion. Jessica Cornet is saying that you have heard. Okay, that's good. You're a bit of a sort of niche expert on these things, though, aren't you? So Pavel saying you haven't heard. Yeah. So I just before we transmit to the Zoom session, I just want to give a little bit of a sense of why we do this. So I'm so glad that some of you are saying that this is resonating. Megan Price. When I first meditation teacher called Lee Brasington talk about how, what you have to do when you start feeling that pleasure and that kind of subtle energy in meditation, the instruction is to actually change your focus onto that pleasant sensation, grow that pleasant sensation, and see where it goes. Because it just, as you see from these 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, it's an incredible journey of deepening, and it's all there for us. It is, in a way, I like to think of it, it's our birthright. We have these realms of possibility inside us. And when you encounter these states that are almost exactly the same as described as by the Buddha 2,500 years ago, there is something really quite amazing and wonderful about that. Sometimes people go into certain practices and they find that they can't really make much headway with them because of a lot of, we could just bracket it all as kind of mental health issues. So people that suffer from anxiety, depression, and a lot of other things, sometimes you get a kind of what they call a dry insight tradition, where it's just mindfulness and you just keep on bringing back this kind of sense. It's all about equanimity. What you are mindful of is often a lot of difficulties in the energy system, and depression can be likened in a way to a kind of back pressure of stress that is built up in the system, and it's actually done. I'm not going to say damage. It's put that energy system out of alignment, let's say. And if you can use this practice to open that energy system up, then you are in such a better position to be able to work your way out of that depressive state. I mean, this is not just my opinion. There's a lot of people that teach this now. And what we find is that people just say, oh, it's about letting go. Enlightenment is ultimately about letting go of the idea of the self, letting go of the thoughts, letting go of the proliferation of the thoughts, letting go of these unwholesome states. How does one do that, really? If you say to someone, let go, what happens? Some people have a great time with it, and there are people in certain non-dual traditions that will really just, go very, but often it is something that either kind of, is just another thing that they can't really get into. It's certainly something that I was like, well, okay, is this it? So I'm just sort of being mindful, and this is a sort of a more gradual path in a way, but the gradualness of it brings this access to joy, to rapture if you want it, to peace if you want it, to stillness. So all of that is really a comprehensive path towards letting go, because every stage you're letting go of something more, and that might not be totally clear of what I'm talking about, but I hope that we get to continue talking about it at some point. So some people kind of come with the question of like, is this selfish? And I just feel like that's quite an interesting question. It's often coming from a lot of integrity and all. I don't want to just be a jhana junkie. Actually, Buddha said, be a jhana junkie, get addicted. He actually attached to these pleasures. I'll go into it another time perhaps. But he says, I'll just say it now. Basically, there's this monk called Kunda, and he's quite a novice monk, and he's out in the fields, and someone comes up to him and says, Buddhist monks and you Buddhist nuns, you are attached and addicted to ill will, aversion, stealing, sexual misconduct, sense pleasures, and all these things. And he he basically didn't know what to say to the guy because he's a novice monk. So he came back to the Buddha and was like, "Oh, this guy's saying that we're addicted to all these things," and the Buddha says, "Okay, well, that's fine. If he says that again, just say no, we're not addicted to those things. But what we are addicted to is 4 pleasures that we allow ourselves, and that is the pleasure of Jhana 1, Jhana 2, Jhana 3, and Jhana 4, because these pleasures are totally conducive, totally facilitative of awakening. These are pleasures that lead to letting go. They lead to nirvana. That's what the Buddha said. And a lot of people hear that and it's like, oh no, but it's Buddhism, you shouldn't get attached. We're going to come back to this question, but is it really selfish? What is our energy that we put out in the world? You know, I often think that something like anarchism is like quite an amazing way of sort of ordering society in some ways. But what is always the undoing of anarchism? What is always the undoing of these sort of communes and kind of places that we kind of go, right, we're just going to build a new society? It's generally because people are suffering and they have something that comes out and it bounces off someone else's suffering and someone else's suffering gets in and the whole thing just falls apart. What is the ingredient that might let us do that and live in harmony with each other? What about the environment and the very real possibility of species loss? You know, what are we being asked for at this time? It seems to me that there is an amount of renunciation involved in this. You know, we have to reduce, reuse, recycle, but then recycling is just, you know, as I found out the other day, I mean, it's kind of a joke. We just send it off to other countries and it gets burned or put in landfill. What is going to allow us to actually step up to this role to be proper stewards of this earth? I know myself, like I've had times when I've really right moral thing in terms of my lifestyle choices, in terms of, you know, environmental decisions. And yet there's a part of me that just needs something. It's like a hungry part of my soul that if I don't have something that I can draw on, then the chances of me making the right choices are actually a lot less. And, you know, is it selfish to develop these pleasures that are actually the pleasures that let us go, that actually bring this beautiful awakening and opening in our life? You know, I just think that jhana, the pleasure of jhana, the resource of jhana, it's like the missing ingredient in all of our meditation practices. How many people have gone on retreat or started a meditation practice and just not kept it up? Maybe there's a bit of enthusiasm at the beginning and there's a bit of commitment and you feel like, right, I'm going to do this. And willpower is not enough for this practice. We need something that really just the mind and the heart just go, wow, I just want to be here. As soon as my practice shifted towards jhana, towards this inclining the mind towards jhana, I just wanted to sit, you know, was appropriate. It felt easy and it's such a sea change in my practice. And I think for all of us, you know, there is, as I said, you know, we're all people that can really get on with actually feeling good. It's our, we deserve to feel good, you know, we deserve to be happy and deserve that happiness that is actually just from our own practice. And it means that we can actually be more available, because as you go on this path, you find that love is a bigger and a bigger part of it. It's not just our happiness. By us being happy, it means that we have more resource, more compassion for others. So really, I would say it's the reverse of selfishness. And people say, is it escapism? Well, the Buddha would actually say, yes, it is escaping. It's escaping the hindrances. So it's escaping these kind of negative states of mind, which stop you from actually experiencing these different layers and different levels of loveliness. And it's really true that it shouldn't be the only thing that you look at. We need to do emotional work. We need to do shadow work. We need to do, psychotherapy sometimes. Everyone is going to be in a different place of how much they can really open up to that. And, I know for me personally, like psychotherapy was incredibly important. It actually allowed me to reparent. I had a very aversive relationship with myself and my inner critic of nothing was ever good enough and everything had to be, amazing. And I let that really spiral me down. And if I'd just been given some kind of, just let go sort of practice, then it's quite likely that I would have just sidestepped that whole journey. That was so important. So we've got to do lots of things on this path, and it really is a life practice. But to actually look at our views of like, is this available for us? It's only need to do that other stuff before I do this. Let's see. Let's open up this type of meditation. Let's see what's there, and let's see if that's open us. Because sometimes, if you can really establish yourself in this kind of energetic opening, you come back and look at the things that are going on in your life in the more sort of psychological sense, and suddenly it's a different world. So is it always that we have to do this psychotherapy, sort of psychology stuff before we do that? It's not always, each view is really important, and it's going to be individual to you. So I'm realizing that it's getting, a little bit long. I'm going to finish pretty much here. And there's so many more things to say about this. This is really just, I wanted to give you a kind of overview of the path. Because I think in subsequent weeks and in subsequent talks, we're going to really try and work with each other in terms of where we're at and in terms of our practice and what do we need right now? What is going forward? What can we attune to this sensitivity? I'm going to answer that question. I may as well answer it now because it's kind of what I was talking. So Emma, you said, have you ever found this leads to grasping for attainment of jhana? I have found sometimes that this grasping for something is the very opposite of what I am trying to attain, leading to frustrations. Yeah. So this is it's a very common question. And it's a question that a lot of people that are steeped in kind of insight meditation practice will often think about. And it comes from a place of a lot of integrity and, really, really appreciate where it's coming from. And it does, it can be an issue. Grasping for the attainment of it is a lot to do with your own relationship to practice in general. And also to do with kind of seeking things that you want in general. So I would just say that if you can have a goal that you don't hold really tightly, sometimes with a goal there's this almost sense that you can really tighten around it. And actually to get into the first jhana, for instance, you just, there's a lot of letting go needs to happen. So it's a little bit like having a intention but not having an expect is quite a subtle process. And the thing is, it's not like, oh, so I've got a bit of an issue here with grasping at the moment. Okay, you open up to that grasping, you sort of become aware of it, and you learn to let it go. It's a step-by-step learning. I'd like to say it's actually a play. We're actually playing here. We're playing with this grasping. It's like the grasping, yeah, okay, no, I feel that. And you feel it in the mind. You feel it as a mind sort of constricting around something. And you just notice it, and you just let it go. And you just come back to just the awareness of the body, just the full body awareness that we were just doing before. That's where your home is. And the mind goes off, it's thinking about, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could get into... No, just come back. Jhāna, you don't need to not be thinking as well. In fact, Buddha was quite clear that the first jhana does involve what he called sustained and evaluative thinking. So there's sometimes the thought of like, oh, does this breath need to be longer, or does this need to be longer? So, but we can come back to this. So just the final thing to say is that a really amazing metaphor, which has come from who I regard as my main teacher. It's like a ladder, each of these stages is like, we get attached to one thing. It's like, oh, wow, the bliss of the first jhana, that's really great. But that allowing us to disidentify and let go of, the state of mind that's come before that, which maybe is kind of worrying about things or restlessness or tiredness, or what Buddha called the 5 hindrances. And I'm not going to get into the 5 hindrances right now, but essentially, that mind that sometimes is like, and proliferating, and, you're actually letting that go to get into the first jhana. So that's one bit of letting go, and it's a great letting go. It feels great. But then the letting go comes even deeper, because you're then letting go of that sort of bliss, the piti, the effervescent stuff, and you're more into this kind of happiness. And then the happiness is like where your home is, and you're really attached to the happiness. You're like, well, you're not actually saying you're quite peaceful when you're doing this, obviously, but there's a part of the chitta that's really struck by this experience, and it's great. You're marinating in it. You're really just enjoying it. Your job is to really melt into it and like sunbathe, nuzzle into it, like lick it up like a little, cat licks honey, or and then the next step is like letting go of that happiness and letting go of the piti, and it's like we have peacefulness, and that's a letting go, and it just keeps on getting refined and refined until, well, what is nirvana? It's a letting go of almost everything that we can even perceive of, including self, including perception. Another way of thinking of it is fabrication. Do you know the self that is so possessed with something that it's like, I am really angry about this thing, or I wrote this really angry post on Facebook or something, and then like an hour later or something, you come back and you just think, oh my God, where did that come from? Where did that come from? That's not me. That's unreal. You can regard that state as unreal. Well, guess what? What you think of as this normality, that's also unreal. And the more subtle you go in this path, the more you realize that actually all of these states and these places, they're all unreal. They're all fabricated. And it's a process of weaning ourselves off each one. So before one other little do we have any ideas for weekly meditation practice maybe? Yes, we're gonna. So what I wanted to leave you with before we get into the Zoom, for anyone who wants to do that, is I want to introduce you guys to the teachings of my teacher, which he's called Rob Babea. And he is incredible, basically. He is the person that has inspired me the most to follow this path. And He has lots of audio teachings that are available on his retreats, and I'm going to share that with you. The second thing is that I was wondering who wants to do a sort of at-home retreat. So it would basically be us, doing it probably all just in our own places, but then having a table of sorts, unless you don't want the timetable, and then have teachings based on the different jhanas, if you want to do jhana. Otherwise, we can just talk about it as samadhi. This is all samadhi practice, basically. You can separate it into the four jhanas, or you can just talk about it as samadhi practice. And it'd be good to talk to some of you to see sort of what you want to start with. But if you want to do it as a group at some point, I'd be more than happy to get involved in that. And yeah, we could do a kind of weekly thing. We could do a weekly meditation. There are lots of options, I just wanted to put this all out here. But I think we'll just go into the Zoom to do that, maybe. How do you feel about that? So I'll write the, I'm going to, in fact, has it really totally frozen? Okay. Sorry, I'm not really sure what happened there. I think it says that it's on again, maybe. Okay. So I'm gonna do a new meeting. Yeah. Oh, it didn't cut anything out for you, but it was lagging. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's kind of crazy old internet world. Well, look, we have some people in the waiting room already. 6 people, in fact. 7. Okay, so in Zoom, you're not going to be able to see face because of technical stuff. But you can just imagine it, as I'm sure there's an after image of it, really, after seeing me. Okay. Wow, it's like an hour and a half after we started. I purposely, did you notice, I purposely didn't make a time because or what I wanted to say or all the rest of it. Okay. Oh, I'm back, or you're back. We're all back. Well, there's 16 of you here, so I think where's the link? The link is at the bottom of the description of the YouTube video. Again, it's like one of those, one after another. Okay, we've almost got 20 people in here. So, yeah. I have no idea what's going to happen here or what we're going to do. It seems to get worse as the live feed continues. Okay. Well, we're just going to have to work with what we have here. Maybe just running Zoom and this is going to be a bit difficult, but yeah. Okay. Well, we'll just go into Zoom. Yeah, it's kind of blocking people out, but yeah, let's do this. Okay. So, admit all. This is it's gonna be interesting. This is where it all just totally grinds to a halt. Hello. Wow, it's saying my internet connection is unstable. So, okay. So we've got 24 people in here. Oh, more in the waiting room. Okay, I'll admit you guys as well. So maybe the best thing to do here is if you have like something that you want to say, because there's quite a lot of us. So I'm trying to work out on the fly what the best thing is to do in terms of who wants to talk and whatnot. Why don't, if I switch this to gallery view, then I can see some of you. And then if you want to say something, then maybe just put your hand up like it's like a class or something, and then I'll just say, oh, why don't you go? Does that sound like reasonable? I haven't even heard anyone else's audio at this point.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Well,
can you see me or hear me?
I can hear you. Oh, hi, Josh.
Hey.
Yeah. So
I can't see anybody.
Thoughts, questions, reflections, shares that maybe aren't even related, but it'd be cool if we could sort of talk about something that is somewhat related. But I think the kind of people that you are, there probably is a lot of relations going on. So, Atlanta, you got your finger up there. You're muted.
Just unmute. Can you hear?
Yeah, can hear you now. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Hi, Xander. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Much better after that. Thank you.
Awesome.
I've got a bit of delay, so I'm going to speak in chunks.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Thank you for that, Xander. That was really lovely. I'm hoping a lot of are really missing connection with our kind of yoga teachers or just our general kind of support base, our community connections that we have in our lives that help us to feel grounded and supported in our communities. And so when you made your offer to discuss that in a kind of a general way through your practice, I saw it as a way to connect. I'm not very happy having to do this through Zoom like everybody else is, but you're very interested in some kind of like weekly connection to try and help us all really get through this vacuum that we're all experiencing because we cannot connect to our usual means of well-being.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's quite interesting really, because this kind of time it is a bit of a opportunity, because some of us won't have maybe as much as we, obviously a lot of us will have a lot to do, but some of us will just sort of have to cope with not having to do the things that they're normally doing, whether that's spiritual practice or whether that's simply just going out with friends and these little things that kind of seem to tide us over. What happens when we take out all of that, and is there a way that we can meet this question of renunciation with something that will actually give us more than we would have if we weren't asked to do this? So yeah, no, I really appreciate that thought, Atlanta. Yeah, so would anyone else like to say anything? Oh, I've got a few more people in here. Wow.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yep. Is that Joshua?
Can that hear us? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can
That's
hear you.
Joshua. Hey, okay. I was taking notes, last night and today a little bit, so just trying to keep up with everybody. You may not be able to see me, but I'm going to do a bow real quick, because usually when I'm with a circle or in meditation, I went to school